How many nations do you think you can scout inside career mode? Is it 50? Is it 100? Well, the answer is actually just 64. With so many different places to look for youngsters though, surely there must be some difference in nations, right? Well, that's exactly what we're looking at today. To find out the differences, I've scouted 400 players from every single nation in the game, and that should give us enough data to get a rough idea about where you should be looking for each type of player. Are wingers still the best ones in Asia? Should you still be getting your physically strong box-to-box midfielders from Africa? Well, before we actually look at the data, let's instead look at how regions and nations are meant to work, thanks to reading some game files from back on FIFA 18. The games might have changed a little bit since then, but the majority of this is still exactly the same. So despite the fact that there's 64 nations in the game to pick from, there's actually only 12 different locations that a youth player can come from. You have South America, that has Argentina and Brazil separated, the same with Southern Europe being all one nation, and then Italy, Spain and Portugal also being one nation. The same with Asia, that has Japan and China as a separate nation, and then all the other regions are just the separate regions that you actually see inside the youth scouting network. So you've got North America, North Europe, you've got Africa, Central Europe and rest of Europe. What this really means is that every single nation in the Northern Europe region is exactly the same. You can get the same level of players from Northern Ireland, Wales, Sweden and England. They all have the exact same odds of finding good players. It also explains why some people say that places like Latvia and Estonia are really underrated options, because Estonia shares the same ratings as England, while Latvia shares the same ratings as places like Poland and the Czech Republic. I'm not too sure why France, England and Germany aren't also separated from their region, just like people like Japan and China are, because a lot of these nations are producing very different kinds of players at the moment. You would expect somewhere like France to have better odds of producing a winger than somewhere like Germany, but you'd also expect English players to be quite good box-to-box midfielders. It really should be separated, and I'm not too sure why it's not. So every one of these 12 regions that we've just mentioned has a unique value for finding a platinum player. This is the type of player that will come through with over 85 potential. For Argentina and Brazil, this is meant to be 15% of players. For Africa, it was meant to be 6, and for Australia, it was meant to be 1. I've put all the odds on screen right now. Everything we've said up to now in the video has been from our best knowledge, with the game files being hidden and encrypted since after FIFA 18. If I'm being totally honest, a lot of things have changed in career mode since FIFA 18 when it comes to youth development. From the data that I've collected, things are actually a lot more even right now. With 5-star scouts, 5% of my Australian recruits had over 85 potential. We had 6% in Nigeria and New Zealand, while 8% of my Brazilians would have been elite platinum players if I was doing a regular save, not a crazy experiment. You might think, won't this just absolutely ruin the World Cup? Well, first of all, the World Cup isn't even licensed on FC24, so probably not. But also, the way that the game works is that the other teams inside your career mode save don't actually use the Youth Academy system. If you could play 30 years in career mode, which you can with mods on PC, you will see that the best players in the world will be a French left winger, also known as Mbappe's regen, and also a Norwegian striker, which is known as Haaland's regen. The game just recycles and regenerates the same players, so it doesn't really matter how balanced they make the Youth Academy system. The only person that uses it, and the only time that any new players are ever added into the database inside your career mode, is when you personally use the Youth Academy system. That's why it doesn't really matter the ratings of these. All it does is provide some realism if you are scouting every single country at the same time. So while it doesn't actually matter where you scout if you want high quality regens, what does matter is if you leave your scout on any rather than specifying a certain type of player. The regions do still have differences in what kind of players are generated. Asia still gives me a massive chance of providing what looked like a winger, but it also seems to be lower than the 40% that FIFA 18 claimed to generate them at. This is why people, including myself, have said that Asia is the best region for wingers. Asia might only create platinum players 3% of the time, but when 40% of the players are wingers, this means it will actually produce more top wingers than Central Europe. This is because while Europe does produce 3 times more platinum players, Asia produces 4 times more wingers, so there's more likelihood of you getting a platinum winger if you're scouting somewhere like China than it is if you're scouting Germany. Honestly, that's just about the only things you really need to know to get the ideal Youth Academy network set up. Nationality actually barely matters at all anymore, and if you're specifying a player role, then it doesn't matter at all. In fact, 3 of my best 10 players of the 4,000 that I generated, with all 93 potential, came from Canada, Venezuela, and Egypt. Hopefully today was an interesting experiment for you to watch, and thankfully I just ran a script overnight to keep generating, screenshotting, and using computer vision to log every single player straight into a spreadsheet. It was super easy for me to create, and hopefully it resulted in a quite enjoyable outcome. But thank you for watching, I'll see you soon, cheers and goodbye.